Yes. Can I start, Krishna?
Yes, yes, you can, sir.
Yeah. Friends, today I have great pleasure to welcome Mr. Hemant Shah on this webinar program. Let me introduce him to you first. Mr. Hemant Shah is an IITian from Kanpur IIT, and after passing out from there, he started his own software consultancy. And how did he come into this field of jewelry manufacturing and marketing? Is because one of his clients at the time was Mahindra Brothers. I think it is a well-known firm, a well-known diamantarian of repute, and was instrumental. He was instrumental for his foray into the diamond and jewelry manufacturing and marketing industry. So Mr. Shah set up their jewelry division. Most of us can recall that jewelry division as Uni Design for domestic as well as for export markets. Since then, he has given his valuable services to various diamond and jewelry companies, specializing in branding, sales, marketing, and strategies. He will tell you today how our industry needs to make a shift from selling mode to marketing mode by way of investing and developing a, a culture of innovation. Mr. Shah himself is an enviable entrepreneur who has been extremely innovative in designing the most creative programs. Friends, for your information, he has launched his brand Vibrant with a novel and innovatively unique distribution model by way of V Mobiles, V for victory, V Mobiles, the shop on the go. His another brand is Alcraftist. When he comes on the screen, you will see there is a shirt he is wearing with a logo, Alcraftist, wherein every collection is based on various Indian crafts like dokra, bidri, paper mache, etc. Currently, he is working as an independent consultant and conducts workshops, knowledge sessions, and webinar training under the banner Thought Shots. He is also one of the founders and CEO of Chatney Soft. What is Chatney Soft? It is a company that has launched the portal Assure Do, a SaaS model. SaaS stands for Software as a Subscription. SaaS model for task, compliance, meetings, and SOP management. And I believe that today, this 1.5 hour long session, he will keep you all spellbound and our knowledge will be greatly enhanced by his delivery. So over to Mr. Hemant Shah. Please listen.
Thank you, Prakashji. Thank you very much for your kind words. And yes, you can see Alcraftist here. So friends, today I'm not really going to focus on marketing in the traditional sense. What I am going to focus on is actually something that we have been doing at Alcraftist for over 7 years now. I believe that everything in life is not about commoditization. There are things that need to be kept exclusive. There are things that need to be nurtured time over time over time. But this nurturing cannot be without keeping in mind the current times, the current needs of the consumer, the current preferences of the consumer. I am going to today talk about how our traditional crafts, our handicrafts, can be used to expand the scope of our work. And I have put together a small presentation today, which is what I'm going to start with. I'm going to now share my screen with you. So you lucky guys are not going to see so much of me as you're seeing right now. Okay, you'll see me in a smaller frame, but you'll see my content on a much larger frame. So give me a second to please share my screen, and then we shall take this forward. Yes, now that we are on board, I have named the presentation today as Heritage is the Future. You will notice that I have put the title in Hindi also, Virasat Hi Apna Bhavishya Hai. I have taken the liberty of using Google Translate extensively to translate into Hindi some of the words so that all my participants at least will understand the key features. I'm going to try and make my presentation also a mix of Hindi and English so that everybody can follow. So Heritage is the Future is going to be our topic today. And when I say heritage is the future, what I really need to understand, is what is it that we will discuss when we say heritage is the future? I think the first point I'm going to make, though very briefly, is that we always need to, should, and without knowing it subconsciously, we always take inspiration from the past. It may not always be inspiration, it may be caution also, but we take inspiration from the past. And I do believe that we can leverage our traditional crafts to help us grow and to create various niches for ourselves. Going forward, niche creation is going to be a very important component of our business. How do we globalize ourselves using these traditional crafts? And how do we innovate? How do we innovate and leverage these traditional crafts? What is the process we would follow for leveraging the traditional crafts so that we go and get a global market and expand the scope of the craft? In short, how do we modernize everything? Because you cannot go selling the same thing over and over again. As I said in the beginning, you need to make sure that your craft, maintaining its basic, maintaining the heritage, is something that is interesting and which is desirous, which creates a desire among the consumers who are your target audience. So we are going to look at this aspect today. And how does one look at inspiration from the past? You are frequently told that forget the past, focus on the present. Trust me, that's not true, not always true. In fact, most of the time, I would not say that is true, because it is your past that is going to keep your creative tank full, because you have a reference point of the past and you need to know what you need to create to get to today's situation. So to keep your creative tank full, you need to try referencing designs of a bygone era. There are times when certain designs of a bygone era, under certain tweaked conditions, become a part of a modern era. Perfect. That's exactly what I want to look at. And we as designers, developers, marketers are aware of what can be done. We can start to move past the norm-restricted processes. मैं यहाँ कहना क्या चाहता हूँ कि जब तक हम लोग जो डिजाइनर्स है, डेवलपर्स है, मार्केटिंग करने वाले हैं, हमें जब तक अपने खुद का ज्ञान है कि क्या कर सकते हैं, क्या हो सकता है, तभी जाके हम अपने जो कंफर्ट जोन में है, अपन जो अभी कर रहे हैं, वो नॉर्म्स, वो बाधाएं से निकल के कुछ और नया करेंगे. So this is a very important part of life. Every day you have to keep changing. The only thing that is constant is change. एक चीज है जो हमेशा रहती है, जो हमेशा चलती है, वो चेंज है. तो आज का जो करोगे वो पास्ट से डिटरमिन होता है, और आज जो आप करोगे उससे आपका फ्यूचर निर्भर होगा. So today is important. The past is important because that's what got you here. Today is important because that's what's going to take you in the future. So there is always a link between the past and the future. And that's what we have to keep in mind and make sure that we are doing everything. I'm told to get a little louder, and I'm going to try and do that. Hopefully you will be able to hear me better. Always remember कि भविष्य के लिए, for the future, the past is a golden reference. There is no better reference than the past. And people use it all the time, whether it is in business, whether it is in design. What today, design inspirations are coming from old traditional things of the Mughal era and even before. You look at Italy, what is the tradition coming from? All the wonderful architecture that is there. So for the future, the past is a golden reference, and don't forget that. Okay, so to change your future, you need to look into the past. Yes, so only when you look into the past will you be able to change your future for a better lesson. So what do we do with the past? The first thing is we learn from past mistakes. Every one of us does this. And I don't think any of us can say that we do not learn from past mistakes. You will learn from mistakes as little as 2 minutes old to as much as 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, even before you were born. There are mistakes that have been chronicled which make you learn from there, and so that you do not commit those blunders in the future. So everybody learns from past mistakes. You learn from past successes. If you did something right, you know what you did right, and therefore you can emulate that in the future to get better, bigger, and consistent successes. So you learn from past successes. You rediscover lost passions. Trust me, this lockdown period, there will be so many of us who are rediscovering our lost passions. We didn't have time to read books. We didn't have time to sit and play with the family. We didn't have time to do so many things that you have enough time to do today. Discover your lost passions. You discover lost processes, and that is where actually crafts come in. Do you know that actually one of the modern processes of jewelry manufacturing that we use today, which is known as the lost wax casting process, was actually a process that has been in existence for so many years. We will be talking about this a little later, but the processes are still the same. The methodology, the materials used are different. And we'll be going to looking at that in some time. So look forward to the new. Always look forward to the new. You stay where you are, you will remain how you are. If you want to grow, if you want to become better, you have to keep looking for the new all the time. You need to keep innovating, you need to keep improving, you need to do so many different things. So to create future products, look into the traditional arts and crafts. Leverage them, use them for a new tomorrow. नए कल के लिए पारंपरिक कला और शिल्प का लाभ उठाए. Very important. और आज का मेन टॉपिक यही है कि नए कल के लिए पारंपरिक कला और शिल्प का लाभ उठाए. So let's take something like take saris. Saris were something that was very, very traditional. In India, we've known it for as long as we can live. But as you will see from these photographs, there are so many versions that have come out. Different style of draping the sari, different designs of the sari, different combinations of the sari, where you might wear a chanya choli to look like a sari, where you're wearing a skirt made out of a sari, the top made out of a sari. There are so many new modifications that are coming in. The ethnic styling changes, the embroidery changes. Basically, saris have today become a global phenomenon. Not necessarily in the traditional sense, but it is still all derivations of the traditional sari. So this is what we talk of when we say leveraging traditional arts and crafts for the modern and the future use. Take brass work. What you see here is traditional, but today you see brass work all over the world and people love it. People buy it. You will find Ganesh Murtis in brass any part of the world you go to. You will find such brass boxes anywhere you go to. So this is a craft that has been globalized. Take Dokra. What you see on the left are the traditional Dokra pieces that used to be made. Now look at what somebody has done. On the right, you see a beer mug or a jug made out of Dokra. And look at it. Are you not going to love it if somebody serves you a beer in a restaurant in this kind of a mug? It's so different. It's so refreshing. The beer may be less refreshing than being served in such a mug. So this is what I talk of when I say leverage the crafts for the future. Yoga needs no explanation whatsoever. I think that is one of the Indian crafts or Indian arts that has received such global recognition that one cannot imagine. We'll talk about this a little later. What are the other things that blue pottery? I'm sure you all know what blue pottery is. That has taken a global tinge. Madhubani and Bhat paintings, globally in demand. Cane and bamboo work, globally in demand. Papier mâché, globally in demand. So you see that all Theva, people love these crafts. Why? Because they have been promoted. Somebody, somewhere, no matter how small, has taken the trouble of using these crafts to create a demand for the modern consumer. That is the only way you can leverage. There are some other factors that come into play, which we'll be looking at shortly. So what is globalization? At the end of the day, only if you globalize these arts and crafts are you going to create a substantial business. So globalization is basically the integration of markets all across the world in a global economy. Okay, so as long as free trading is allowed, as long as one business works in another geographical area, no matter where it is located, globalization happens. And with the advent of internet, with the advent of e-commerce, with the advent of boundaryless businesses, globalization has become a very, very easy part. Okay, so all these interconnected economies are now a given. Nobody has to think about it. But globalization should also include the integration of political and cultural systems. So your craft, which was typically a Hindu culture, say yoga, has been modernized to suit the Western culture without losing its core values. And that is a very important factor. We do not want to bastardize any of the crafts that are there. They need to remain authentic, but modified for the current consumer. And what this all will do is that whether you are east or west, north or south, it will all bring you together and make one what we call today a global village. So this is what we need to do with our arts and crafts. So what are the advantages? The first is that you are using local expertise as a comparative advantage. What I mean to say here is that if I'm making a piece of Dokra jewelry, there is literally no other geographical area that is going to make that for me. That can be done only from India. So I am using a local Indian expertise in a global market to have an advantage where I don't have competition from any other geographical place. I get access to larger markets because it is not known. If I make the product interesting and attractive enough for a global audience, from just selling Dokra in India, or maybe even just for a small part of India, I get access to the whole world, the whole global village that we just mentioned. And this gives you a niche operation. How many people are there who will be able to make attractive, fun-filled, useful jewelry? Very few, exactly. So you are going to create a niche for yourself. You might have 2, 3, 5, 7 competitors, but not 1,000 competitors as we have today in our jewelry field. You go to India, you go to China, you go to Germany, you go everywhere, everybody is manufacturing practically the same thing. But the day we start using our crafts, our Indian crafts to manufacture different kinds of product, there is no competition. All those thousands of manufacturers pale. They just fade away, far away into the horizon. So you get a niche operation. And because of this, because you are accessing bigger markets, because the demand is increasing, the local economy is growing and there is more employment. I can tell you, when we started work with Dokra, there were children who were not working in the craft because they made far more money just working as an office boy in some company a little away. But now when you start selling more and you see that there is enough work and where they stand to make money, at the end of the day, they need to feed themselves and their families, then they come back. And this is the real success. And therefore, if we promote the crafts, you are going to get a lot more economic growth and increased employment locally. And you're expanding your creative, not only yours, you are going to expand the creativity of every one of those craftsmen, because you are going to teach them to do things that they have never done in their life. Everybody is, and trust me, no matter what you think about them, once you open a door to them, they go far ahead than what you are looking at. And your value add is higher. Normally, only when there are thousands of competitors selling the same thing is there a price war. But when there are very few select people and who can create a limited amount of product and just got clearly USPs that were unthinkable, handmade, green, fair trade. There are so many tags that we can put on this depending on how our processes are set up. Your value add is substantially higher. So you're making much better money, and therefore you can support society and everybody else within the economy much better. So what are the challenges? Why is globalization of crafts such a big challenge? Because the local meet global, and yet managing the localness is a tough thing. At times you are riding a very, very thin wire. Okay, local meets global and yet sustaining localness. What do I mean by this? Let me give you an example. A lot of people will look at Dokra, which is the wire work, and then say, oh, this is too expensive. This cannot give me volumes. I need thousands of pieces. So they will create a mold giving the same effect. Are you maintaining the localness anymore? No. Is that going to be a story anymore? No. But if I'm doing genuine Dokra in the local way, in the traditional way, and selling it with a story of how the product is created, who's going to get a better price? Who's going to get a better consumer? No brainer, right? So local meet global, but sustain the localness. Do not try to mix up, do not try to assimilate local culture into a global one. Let it remain local. The culture remains the same. Let their thought process, let their product design go global. Don't change the localness. Don't change the local flavor. Let their design go global. Let both coexist. Create a hybrid culture. The West has its advantages. The East has its advantages. Let both of them coexist. Let both of them create a culture where this local product is redesigned, modified, reshaped, rebuilt to suit the other person. So let both coexist. Is it a boon or a curse? Always debatable. It depends on how you take it forward, so that it becomes a boon or it becomes a curse. But as long as you are staying true to the craft, there is no issue whatsoever. It will always be a boon. And it needs to be local globally. What I mean here is that my culture should be well explained to the global audience. Although the product is global, the culture that goes into making the product has to be local. So I am local, I'm selling there, but my product has to be local over there. So if I'm selling in the US, my product has to be local for the US or local for Japan or local for Europe, depending on what market I'm targeting. So let us take a case study of yoga. Okay, it was originally Hindu tradition and practice, and which is more than 2,500 years old. I could well be wrong on this. It could well be 5,000 years old. And there are millions of practitioners today all over the world. The globalization really started about 100 years ago. And the mass movement came only in the 20th century. And when did the mass movement really start? It was actually when the Beatles visited the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's ashram in the late 60s, and that popularized it beyond words. Because Beatles were iconic at that time. And when an icon does something, there is a herd following. And that's what happened with yoga. And now today, you have power yoga, you have 5-minute yoga, you have kid yoga, you have nude yoga, I'm told. Everybody is going to innovate on it. Everybody is going to do something to it that makes it attractive for a certain section of the audience. But no matter which yoga you are looking at, the core is still the same. The exercises, the asanas that they do are still the same. They have not changed at all. So this is what is important. So it is now practiced in numerous countries. And this is actually an ideal case of reverse innovation. What do we mean by reverse innovation? Normally what happens is that innovation happens in a developed country. And then that innovation is brought down in various ways by making it inexpensive, by compromising on some of the features of the innovation to make it affordable for those developing countries. But here in what has happened is that yoga was existing in a developing country, in an underdeveloped country in the modern sense, and which has gone to the developed countries, to the more rich countries, to the more countries that can afford more, and therefore it has gone leaps and bounds to become something that is globally accepted with lots of variation because that funding was available. To the extent that recently we now have an International Yoga Day. Thank you, Mr. Narendra Modi. Thank you, Prime Minister Modi. Yeah. And look at the spread that yoga has given you. There is an entire business of merchandise for yoga. Somebody is just making yoga mats and selling. Somebody is making special yoga clothes and selling. There are so many things that are, look at the TV, look at the books that are available in yoga. There are so many things that have happened. But yoga has also undergone tremendous transformations. Original yoga was all about steadiness and stillness. What has it evolved to? Today there is dynamic movement as a part of yoga. From pre-classical, original form, to classical, which was documented and systemized. Okay, today we have what is called the post-classical, which is a shift from Vedic to body rejuvenation and enlightenment. And to modern yoga, as I said, there is power yoga, and there is so many different kinds of yoga. Originally, it was taught by gurus. Now, there are TV shows, books, videos, you name it, you can sit at home and learn it. You can sit at home and practice it. Okay? Originally, it was a cultural activity. It was a practice that was followed by the Hindus. Today, it has become a transcultural phenomena, And it's not just a cultural activity, it's a health activity now. That is the change. That is the transformation that has happened with yoga. So now let's look at how these crafts can work. So what is innovation? Innovation is a new idea, a creative thought, a new imagination of any process, of any service, of any device, anything that you can do, which is giving a better solution than the one existing. But the better solution should always benefit the user. If it does not benefit the user, it is not an innovation anymore. So we need to keep innovating constantly. In fact, I am such a big believer of innovation that my handle, I think on WhatsApp, also says innovate or perish. That's how strongly I believe about innovation. So innovation is something that is going to be the base of everything you do and achieve in life. And there are 4 different kinds of innovations. One is incremental innovation. Incremental innovation is the most common form. आप जहां देखो वहां incremental innovation हमेशा होता रहता है. Basically what you're doing is using the existing technology, but by using the existing technology and innovating the way you have done, you increase the value of that product for the consumer. As I said, any innovation, if it does not benefit the customer, it is of no use whatsoever. So this incremental innovation should also increase the value to the customer, whether it is by features, whether it is by design, whether it is by changes. Apple has always been a radical innovation, but Samsung has always done incremental innovations. Okay, they'll modify the design, they'll modify the screen, whatever, and yet they are also innovating. Okay, then there is disruptive innovation. Okay, what disruptive innovation does is say something like an Uber. The largest cab company in the world has no cabs of their own. They have disrupted that whole ecological system on which the cab industry used to run, to the extent that today they are even disrupting the plans of all the automobile manufacturers. That is disruptive. And then you have architectural innovation, where you are modifying the entire build-up of a device or of anything that can be constructed to give you a completely new product. Okay, so this requires taking lessons in new technology, in skills, in applying them to different markets, because something you build for India may not work in the same design in the US market. And then we have radical innovation, as I said, about Apple launching the iPhone. That is what we call radical innovation. Nobody had ever imagined that something like an iPhone would be used and be called a phone. Okay. It creates revolutionary technology. So these are the different kinds of innovations that we generally look at. So now, when we look at handicraft, remember one thing. Handicraft is the original technology. Hand tech, that's handicraft. It is the original technology way before any machine came into being. So it is the original technology. And it was, how did handicrafts come about? It was one's personal need to use both the mind as well as the body, the hands, to create something. That's handicraft. Okay? It is of very ancient origin. Ever since man existed. The guy who first found the wheel also was handicraft. The first lady to wear a necklace made out of bones or stone was also handicraft. But it was technology. At that time, the newest technology was how to link 2 bones or 2 stones together to form a necklace. So it is the original technology that we are talking of, and it is ancient. It has rich and diverse cultures, because that stone has gone to Stone and bones have gone to various other materials, coming right up to where we are today. Cutting and polishing the stones to make them. The first stone necklace was made out of just raw stone. Today's stone necklaces, there are still stone necklaces available, trust me. But their stones are cut, the stones are polished, the stones are shaped to give you what you see today. Okay. It has traditional beauty, it has dignity, it has form, it has style, and it has aesthetics. Everything that you would want in product, especially jewelry. And it is versatile in the use of material, like we are now also practicing ourselves. We do gold and we do diamonds, we do gold and we do color stones, we are using different material. Forget that, now we are using titanium and diamonds. We are using titanium and stones. We are using stainless steel and stones. And the latest, you are using all of this with lab-grown diamonds. So versatile in the use of material, and the product form and category changes because that material gives you the option to create different things. You are going to change it. So this is what handicraft gives you. So I'm going to take you through a short video on the India Heritage Collection, which we have formed. Sorry, I don't know what is happening. Okay, I think my video is gone for a toss. Or no, here you are.
Dokra is an ancient craft of metal casting that comes from India. A few metal objects found in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa have a very strong resemblance to the Dokra objects and figures, suggesting that this craft originated during the prehistoric times. Prepared by the community of Ghadwas, Dokra objects are scattered all over the Bastar region in India. The term Ghadwa means the act of shaping and creating. There is a legend in the Bastar region regarding the origin of the craft. In prehistoric times, when the first tribals were roaming the forest hunting for food, they found a strange thing in the jungle. On closer examination, it was found that due to the heat of the forest fire, molten metal had poured into the grooves of a beehive, where the wax had melted away. Tribes soon learned the art of molding metal and used it to make images of mother goddesses and other deities.
Okay, so now you know. Now, first thing is I'd like to point out here is that now you know where the lost wax casting process comes from. Yes, it was an accident which was discovered by some of these tribals and which today, after thousands of years, after thousands of modernization stages, is what we use today. Okay, so now what were the challenges? First thing is that till today, most of the crafts are only local trade. And therefore they have knowledge only of the local business, the local design, the local consumption, and nothing more. Okay, so they have no knowledge or experience of exports. Exports for them is, even if it comes from Jhumri Talaiya to Bombay, it is an export for them because they don't know the Bombay culture. Okay, so that's the thing. They have no understanding of global needs pertaining to design and quality. And this is the single most important factor when you start working with crafts for a global economy. The quality parameters and the design standards and forms need to change. And to change this, the craftsmen require a lot of training, a lot of supervision, and this takes time, this takes effort, this takes money. But without this, there is no way that you are going to go ahead and create a globally acceptable product from any of the crafts that we would look at. So you need to have an understanding of global needs, design, and quality. Normally these are fragmented, like Dokra is made in Chhattisgarh, Dokra is also made in Bihar, Dokra is also made in some other places. They are fragmented. They are all regional. in Chhattisgarh also, it's not that whole of Chhattisgarh everywhere dokra is made. There are, like we make our dokra in a small village called Kondagaon, which is about 2.5 hours away from Raipur. Okay, so there are pockets by which this works. And then there are very particular communities, tribes, whatever you want to call them, who work on these crafts. It is labor intensive. In fact, I have a document, I don't know if time permits, I will show it to you, but if you see the process, they use no electricity, they use nothing that is chemical based, so they don't use any wax which is made in a factory or any, they use beeswax, they use mud for investment powder, but it is highly labor intensive because everything is handmade. So it's highly labor intensive. It's a cottage industry, and let it remain at that. I know people who have tried to bring craftsmen to Bombay or Surat or even smaller villages, uprooting them from where they were really. And the craft has also been killed, and also the use of material has changed. It does not remain authentic in its flavor anymore. And they use simple old school tools. This did not be true. You can start training them to use better tools as long as they remain honest and as long as the tools are just an improvement and not a mechanization especially. Okay. So they use simple old school tools. So when I say the future is in tradition, I am now going to take you quickly in about 15 minutes through back to the future processes. How does one start going into the future using traditional crafts? So back to the future is a process whereby one looks into the past, heritage or traditional practices to create, understand and tweak the processes, modify the processes to make them more acceptable across different markets. This is the thing that is going to include design, it's going to include tools, it is going to include the methods by which they do it. All of this is going to be included in these processes and then achieve quality and design which is as per the requirements of the global audience. This is what we are going to look at today. So where does it start? The first point is pinpoint details. As you will see here, you will find the closest Hindi translation I could get from Google for each of these points. So when I say pinpoint details, potentials, what I'm talking of is that there are so many different crafts that are available. You need to study each craft and figure out which of these have the potential to be used for what you want to create. Okay, so if I want to create jewelry, can I use dokra? Can I use bidri? Can I use terracotta? You got to figure out how this is going to be thing. And then at the end of the day, whether that craft is going to be practically applicable. So you need to pinpoint the potentials. Sambhavnaon ki pehchan kare. So when we started Allcraftist, we looked at bamboo, okay, and we found all this. We looked at bidri, and this is what was available. We looked at dokra, this is what was available. And then we looked at Wali paintings, okay. Then we looked at paper mache, we looked at chitri embossing, we looked at wood carving, we looked at pottery. And from all of this, we are currently working with bidri, dokra, paper mache, and we have just recently started Tarakashi, although it's not a part of this list. I will show you some samples or pictures of our product a little later. Study the suitability, okay? Whether this is going to work, whether this craft process, and to do this, you really need to understand the craft in detail. Go spend some time with those craftsmen, see them work, see the processes, and then decide whether this is going to be suitable for the kind of product that you want to bring into the market. Okay, analyze. Continuous analysis of how a process can be tweaked, how the quality can be improved. So study the suitability of this process, of this craft to be able to give you the product in the quality, in the design for the market that you desire. And then you start developing designs. First, develop a few designs to test out so that you know whether those craftsmen are going to be able to get and make the change that you need, give you the quality that you need. So start developing some designs, okay? And here, this is some of the first designs we created. Of course, all of them never got made. Though a lot of them did, but these were some of the first designs that we made when we started with Dokra. Okay, and then we went and stayed with those people for prolonged meaning 1 week, 10 days. My partner Vikram Singh used to do it. He would go stay with them, show them how to make these things using their technology. So to get to doing that, Vikram had before that gone and spent so much time and understood and researched so much on the craft to be able to explain to them how to change. So this was some of the initial designs that we made. Now look at how modernization happens. If you see the top designs, they are all the traditional designs that this craftsman used to make for many, many years. What you see below is what we have done with it. If you will see, they used to do this round necklace with the threaded thing. What we have done is we still use round Dokra pieces, but look at the modern look we have given it. They used to use these figurines to make necklaces. Look at how we have used the figurine, but made it into a modern pendant. They used to use stones when they make their earrings. Look at how we have used stones to make this pair of earrings. This is what I mean by globalization. My target audience could not use the upper ones. I cater mainly to the Western consumer. We had to tweak the designs. We had to make sure that we got what we wanted in the quality. Look at the quality that you see down and look at the quality that you see up. This is what I'm talking of. Look at Bidri. The bangle that you see, they never made bracelets, first of all. I had never seen a Bidri bracelet before that. They used to make bangles. We started making bracelets out of it. The same design, but look at the creative aspect and look at the way we have created a design. They used to make earrings. Look at what we have done to make the earring. They used to make pendants, the shell-shaped pendant. Look at what we did with that to make the pendant. This is what I'm talking of. Making the design, and look at the quality of everything you see below. It's as good as fine jewelry. Nobody will say this is fashion jewelry. Okay, so this is what I'm talking of. Look at what we are doing with Tarakashi. They used to make earrings like this. Look what we have done. We put a stone behind it. We put a border which is plated in pink gold. Okay, and you get a completely different modern look. They used to make simple earrings. Look at what we did with it. We gave them a twist with a modern look. They used to make stone set pendants and earrings. Look at what we did with it. This is what I mean by changing crafts. It's a lot of work. You will not ever be able to guess the amount of time and energy we have spent working with this craftsman, not only to create the way we want, but to give us the quality that we want. Stuff, but the returns are there. And we work with practically no competition. So there's nobody, of course, we always charge a fair price, but there's nobody who's going to come and tell me that why are you charging me $2 per gram? I can get it for $1 a gram. It's not happening, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Then the next step is to test and train. Once you make these designs, you need to test whether they can be made by the craftsman and train them to do it, and also to give you the quality that you require. So you need to test and train them. And then you need to modernize mechanics. Like, let me give you an example. When we started working with Dokra, they were always building that furnace on the ground. And to get the fire going, they used to use a cardboard sheet or a metal sheet to fan it. Somewhere down the line, they started using the blowers. Somewhere down the line, they started using the bellows. All this I'm talking over a period of 8 years. And then the ultimate is now they have the bellow connected to a cycle, a normal cycle, but which is made to be stationary on a U-shaped stand for the rear wheel. and then the bellow is connected to the rear wheel so that when he pedals, the bellow goes up and down. This is what I mean by modernized mechanics. We have not yet given them permission to use electricity. They do have electricity in their village now. They didn't when we started. Over the last 3 years, I think the Modi government has electrolyzed most of India. So they have electricity now, but we are still asking them not to use electricity. We want to maintain the original manufacturing processes. And this is what is going to be our USP. And it is our USP today. So the core USP is that we do not use, we are green as far as the craft component is concerned. So I have this video of making dokra, but I think it is nearly 5-7 minutes long. So I am going to skip it for the meantime. And then if we have a chance, I will come back to it. Okay. Product precision. So you saw how our product is made. It has to be precise. It has to fit into the core, into the frame that we make so that we don't have to rework on it all the time. So you need to make products that are precise. You need to figure out ways by which you will explain to them how this product has to be made so that it is precise. See, they're not used to it. For them, each one was a different one-off piece. They never did something like this. So you got to teach them. So, but product precision, you got to find ways in which you will convey that to them. Something as simple, like I'll tell you the paper mache guys that we work with in Kashmir. Simple thing we did is that for the sizing requirements, we just cut out plates of that size and give it to them. Okay, every piece you make, this is the size that we want. No hi-fi technology, no hi-fi nothing. They don't even use a vernier calipers. Forget anything else. Yes, they do have rulers, but they don't even use a vernier calipers. That kind of accuracy is not what we are looking at. What we are looking at product precision as required for making our product. Okay, so you need to figure out ways to get this preciseness into all the products that you get. Because otherwise your assembly and processing at the end is going to be a big challenge. Now that you have got all this done, now that your people are trained, now that you know what kind of products they are, some of the original designs may not work out as they didn't in our case. So you know the limitation. Okay, this design is not what I can do as of now. I am always hopeful that someday I will train them to do that. Okay, but you need to, now that you are ready, create collections. You need a collection at the end of the day to sell. You are not going to sell one-off pieces. Okay, so you need a collection. So now started having tested and studied in detail what is the practical aspect of using that craft. What are the limitations? What are the qualities restrictions that are there? Based on this knowledge, now you start working and creating collections. And therefore, this transfer of knowledge is very critical. Ideally, I would suggest that send each of your designers who's working on this for a few days to stay with the craftsmen and see how they work. There is no loss of translation when they see it themselves. But now is the time to start creating collections. And these are some of our collections. You will see we have taken one form and created an earring. This is also an earring, then a ring, and then a bangle out of it. Or we have taken the stone, this thing, and look at the earrings and the bracelet that we have made. Now that we are here at this bracelet, look at the back of the bracelet. There's a complete jali there, the checked thing that you can see in silver. All of our product, okay, here most of them you're seeing only the front, but all over product, the back is as clean, as attractive as the front of the product. Just raises you a notch above the competition. It makes your product desirable. Okay. Most people don't see the back, but when you are yourself wearing it and the back is so nice, comfortable and feels good, don't you feel great? That's what we want our customers to feel. That's what we are looking at. And the last one that you see, we've used figurines. So what you are seeing here is the front and back of the earrings. So this is a collection that was mainly made for Mother's Day. So all the figures, although they may not be clear on your screen, they are all figures of families or mother and child put together. Then monitor manufacturing. For a long time, please remember, these people are not educated. They do understand the processes, but they are not in the habit of writing things down. As you know, all traditional crafts have been passed from generation to generation by practice and by word of mouth. You don't find documentation on how Dokra started and how Dokra has happened till today. That documentation started maybe about 50 years back. So we need to monitor manufacturing because they do not have that rule of write what you say and say what you write, or write what you do and do what you write. It's not there. So you, as the educated partner in this venture, you need to make sure that you are monitoring them, guiding them. Over a period of time, it becomes second nature to them. But that takes time. It's not something that happens very easily. Even today, after so many years of manufacturing Dokra and Bidri, whenever we introduce a new product, we need to monitor it for at least the first 2 or 3 commercial shipments. That's how it works. So again, I have this small video on this thing. This is also, okay, this is a short one. But I think this video I have got just to show you something that innovative that we
At the
did.
factory, they try to maintain the basic form of the Dokra piece, but reduce the weight to make it wearable as a jewelry piece. A master mold of the gold and diamond part of it is prepared in silver and then sent for casting. A silver masterpiece of the final design is sent for casting and filing. The Dokra and gold elements are placed together to get a feel for the final piece. The gold
So
part is
look
then
at
sent for
this.
diamond setting and
You will
polishing.
now see something.
The final piece is ready for quality control
If
and
I
is then sent
solder
off to the real world for
brass
some
and
pretty lady to
gold,
wear.
purifying it, refining it is difficult. Therefore, we use the screw system. We do not solder all this product. There is no soldering. Everything is screwed together. Very important. That is the reason why this small video had been included here.
At the factory,
And then something that you need to do about everything in life all the time. Relentlessly refine. Continuous. Lagatar parishrishta karte raho. You have to keep improving yourself every single day. Tabhi to jaake bandar se aadmi bana hai. Relentlessly refine. Refine your designs, refine your processes, refine your quality, refine the attitude, most important. If you have the right attitude, everything is solved. Okay? And refine the knowledge. We keep training the workers consistently when we ask them to do something and explain to them why they need to do that. Okay? Talking about attitude, there's one sentence I love and I use it all the time. And that is that your altitude in life, your altitude in life is not determined by your aptitude. That's not, but by your attitude. I can do it. Your aptitude in life is not determined by your aptitude, but by your attitude. Remember this. I love this book. And then always keep in mind that you need to take a retail reaction. Keep listening to your customers. That is the best way to improve yourself. Take retail reactions all the time. And anytime you find some problem, some challenge, something that the customer complains about or is unhappy about, correct it. That is the only way to relentlessly refine. And your customer is your best advisor. Advisor, always treat your customer as an advisor. He is going to give you an honest feedback because he knows how he likes to use your product. Okay, so retail reaction is something you need to be doing all the time. And then don't deliberate. Do it. Nike has always said, just do it. Sochte mat raho, kar do. So don't deliberate, do it. This is what is very, very important. And therefore, heritage is the future. You do all these things, you are going to create a business that is going to be so very successful, so much fun. The kind of enjoyment I get after it. Yes. If your goal is to become a $500 million business and take $450 million from the bank to run your business, this business is not fun. Okay. But let me tell you, you might do a $20 million business in the mass product and you do a $5 million business here, you will earn more here than you will earn there. This is the advantage. Okay. So one of the main rules for brainstorming, all this requires brainstorming. One of the main rules for brainstorming is break all the rules. I'm saying brainstorming rules, but I'm saying break all the rules. In fact, a lot of times when we talk of innovation, I do a lot of talks on innovation, even with students and even with various companies. And I always tell them that don't try to innovate. Try to create a necessity for the innovation. What I mean is that I'm going to say that, okay, I have this, but I need this. So let me start by improving slowly. What I am saying is that what you need or where you are, if you just throw it away, what's going to happen? You are going to find the shortest, fastest, and the best way to get that back again. This is what you need to build. That's an attitude you need to build. Break all the rules. Because if you are going to stay within the rules, you are going to stay compromised. You are not going to let your mind cross those boundaries, imaginary boundaries that you have set for yourself. So just let it go for a blast. Yeah. Now, I think we have time. Ganesh, we have time. Krishna, we have time. I can take 5-7 minutes more.
You can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
I'm going to go back to the video so that, because I think you will love seeing the process by which it is made. Okay. I'm going to start this video. It's a 5-7 minute video, but I think you will like seeing how the whole Dokra
The first
process
step in
works.
creating a Dokra article is to obtain a basic form of the desired object in total abstraction using mud, rice chaff, and anthill mud. Anthill mud is sieved before mixing to clean out the impurities. Being extremely porous and fine, it is able to bring out the best details of the basic model. Also, during dewaxing, it is the only mud that can withstand the high temperature of 600 degrees Celsius, while others burn out completely. Mud used preferably is field soil since it gives a better finish. 25% of the mold is also made of cow dung. Once the basic structure has been made and filed, a smooth surface is obtained and is coated with a mix of water and anthill mud using a brush. Before the next step of making the Dokra artifact is carried out, Loban needs to be created. Honey wax is needed for the preparation of Loban. There is no preparation needed to make the wax. Any wax from the market used to make candles can be used here. Although there are variations available, honey wax is used because it is slightly harder than normal wax and therefore easier to work with. Also, the sturdiness means that it doesn't change shape while putting the first layer of sand. The wax is then melted and put in a bucket of water to convert it into a sleet form. From this sheet, they make a thread, thin sheets, or give any other form or shape required. The Loban is ready. The basic structure prepared by the mixture of mud, chaff, and anthill is then decorated with Loban. A wax sheet can also be used. The previously made Loban is drawn into thin wires by heating and pulling. It can further be used to create the jali work, which are intricate motifs and patterns made from the loban for the final piece. First, the runners are fixed. Runners are channels created in the mold to allow the metal to flow and fill up the entire area with the minimal amount of resistance. The model is coated in a solution of water, fine soil, khet ki mitti, which roughly translates to soil of the farm, cow dung, and cotton or jute. The fibers of the cotton or jute bind the solution strongly. This paste helps in sucking out the gases in the mold while pouring the molten metal into the mold. Once this dries, it is coated again with a more solid layer. 2 to 3 pieces, or maybe even more, can be clubbed together to make a bigger mold and avoid waste. The final mold is then coated again and left out to dry. Another underground furnace is prepared and fired to strengthen its walls. It has a connection to a motor that constantly pumps in air to facilitate combustion. Scraps of brass are put in a crucible which is lowered into it and fired till all the brass completely melts and becomes molten. Brass is used because it has a high liquidity and it corrodes slowly. Other alternatives like bronze cool too quickly. Since the metal must reach all the nooks and crannies, it is a requirement that it should cool slowly. The last step of the process, known as cire perdu, is a process of casting the final pieces using wax. An earth kiln is made for baking and dewaxing the molds. There are 2 kinds of bricks that can be used to build the kiln. Fire bricks are ceramic based and can withstand a temperature of 1400 degrees Celsius. Terracotta based bricks can bear a temperature of about 800 degrees Celsius. 3 feet high circular kilns are made, as these are better for the circulation of the air. The kiln is divided in 2 parts. The lower holds the burning fire, and the molds are placed on the upper part. These are separated by an iron mesh, and a few rods are placed to support the mold. The molds that were put to dry are placed in the lower part of the kiln to melt the wax. The wax melts and is vaporized, and the negative cavity remains, encased in the soil mixture. The molds are held upright in sand, and the liquid brass is poured into the mold. The metal flows into all the negative cavities and takes the shape of the mold. It is then left for some time to solidify and set. Thus, the casting is completed. The fired and cast-in molds are hammered. On being broken, the fired mud is separated, it becomes black, and the solidified brass pieces are taken out and washed. Since it is done on a clay model to save wax, the clay inside is hammered and taken out as well. The final piece is ready. The unpolished look of the brass gives it the ethnic look to die for.
Yes. So, okay, I have this charts that I have prepared. Actually, this was prepared for another presentation on the same topic I did at the Indian Jewelry Excellence Symposium in January this year. I will be uploading these charts on the chat here as files, so you can download them and use them whenever and if you want. Okay, thank you very much. I will now take questions. So if anybody has questions, I would request you to please raise them. Who is going to, Preetha, are you going to handle the questions, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
There is question from one Mr. Raj. He has asked that the man-made handicraft maker are usually MSMEs. How do you suggest they optimize their marketing cost in the globalized world?
Okay, so the thing is this, in today's world, and let me tell you, I think you're wrong where most of these people who are doing the graph thing are not even MSMEs. As we said, most of them are cottage industries. How will it happen in today's world? Actually, marketing and promotion with the internet the way it is, with the marketplaces that happen, is a much easier thing. Also, please remember that these are not products where you want to sell thousands of them at a time. Okay, they are very difficult to manufacture, and therefore the manufacturing and the sales of products is probably in the hundreds at a time. So the requirements are different. Do not compare marketing, promoting and selling this to the normal mass manufactured jewelry that we are always looking at. Hope that answers your question, Raj. Yes, Preetha, next one, please.
There is question from Mr. Arpan. He is asking Rolex, etc. price so high as they say it's handmade. Then why Kolkata handmade jewelry doesn't get price?
Fantastic question. And let me tell you, it doesn't get price because we are not doing anything about it. Traditionally, we and even the Calcutta jewelers, mainly because that's the way the retailers have treated them, because we have treated them like that, that we are selling an investment and not a product. When you buy a gold Rolex watch, which is say diamond studded, have you ever gone and asked that person how much gold is there in that, how much diamonds are in that, and what is the weight of the machine? No, because you are buying a product. What we are doing is selling an investment, and therefore we don't pay people well. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, I do not believe that any of us, there are plenty of government schemes available and they form these clusters and they form so many different things. But I truly believe that none of those schemes are actually meant at improving the life, profitability and demand for the product. I think maybe as councils, as associations, we need to take this up so that we can create product. If you see the product that I was showing you when I was showing you my Dokra and this thing, do you think that you would pay $100 for one of those original Dokra pendants? No, but people pay $100 for my pendant. That is what I'm talking of. That is the difference. So you are not getting money for your Calcutta jewelry for the simple reason that you are not creating something where you can demand the money. I hope this answers your question.
Sir, some other question.
Yeah, Preetha, once again. Hemant Bhai,
Yeah.
please request to Pizza sir also, because he is a very hungry for this particular message to be passed to the
Prakash,
entire participant.
Yes,
So,
yes. I would like to supplement what the question was from Arpan
Yeah.
and the answer that you gave, sir. Actually, the problem lies with the fact that whenever we talk of marketing overseas, because as you in your introduction I narrated that you will concentrate upon not upon selling but upon marketing. And you are bang right that sorry, I'm starting my video. Yeah, it is. So this is all the thing about marketing, and what we are selling is definitely it is investment. But I would say that every time whenever we go into the seminars or wherever these mind-boggling sessions are there, we are told that try to understand what the Westerners want, what the वो गोरी चमड़ी वाला लोग ये चीज नहीं पहनता है, आप लोग उनके जैसा बनाइए. And I always raise a question that why don't we recognize that whatever we are doing is also a technology? But the thing is that this technology we need to put into marketing mode by giving some innovative twist that you have shown over there.
Yes, Prakashi, as I said, marketing is the second aspect. First, you need to create a product that is going to be desirable for your target audience. So supposing you want to sell your Calcutta handmade jewelry in US, your current designs are not going to sell except to the Indians in the US, maybe.
Very right.
Okay, maybe. I'm not even saying they will all buy it, but maybe. So what I'm saying is that you need to design, you need to first understand the process. Then you need to create designs such that they will be acceptable to the US consumer, but made using the techniques and the skills of the Kolkata craftsmen. Once you have this, once you have reached the quality level and everything, I explained the whole process. I'm going to follow the same process if I have to do it with Calcutta. Okay, then I will make collections. After that, my marketing starts. I cannot market till a product is ready. And I can give you so many examples where people started marketing before they had a ready product and they lost the game. And I think one of the biggest examples, if you Google and search on this, is going to be the Sega game and the Nintendo game, this thing, where they started marketing, Sony started marketing so heavily, but the product was not available in the shelves. So we need to first create the product and then look at the marketing. What we tend to do, and this is what happens whenever I'm talking to so many people, how will you market? I said, how I will market will depend on what product I'm creating. Okay, today, by virtue of the fact that I am creating craft-based jewelry, I know what the American consumer or the Japanese consumer would love to have. And I can therefore create a collection that I know is going to work. And therefore I go straight to the marketing aspect. Okay. But how do I market if I have no product? In fact, after I started Dokra, you're not going to believe it, it was 4 years before I got a first commercial order. It takes time. It takes time, money, effort. For 4 years, I and my partner were constantly breaking our head, making the right product, getting the right quality. To get the quality that an American market will accept took us over 2 years. They would not understand, the craftsmen would not understand why that quality is required. Arey saab, ye to chalta hi hai. So we need to first look at the product and then look at the marketing. And I believe that there is so much that can be done with Kolkata craftsmen. It's just that I'm very surprised that nobody has taken an initiative in the right direction. As I said, there are so many schemes that when you started working 5 years back also, I saw there are some clusters that have been formed and government organizations that have been formed to promote the crafts. But all those organizations are not looking at the market requirements. You can't market a product that does not meet the market requirements. This is my take on it, Prakash ji.
Very right, sir. Totally agree.
Hemant bhai, I have a query.
Yes.
Behalf of the participant.
Yeah.
So should I focus on my core competency, that is product, and accordingly I will go for searching a market? Yeah, should I go for a market survey, then I will focus to like create some sort of like as for the market required?
Okay.
And next question follow to that.
Yeah.
Like Rolex, uska koi पूछता नहीं है. Certain people are requesting for the Hindi. लेकिन हम जब करते हैं ज्वेलरी को ज्वेलरी एज ए इन्वेस्टमेंट ही लिया जाता है. However, handcraft jewelry cannot be treated as an investment. उसके लिए हमें क्या करना चाहिए? हमारा ये कॉम्पिटेंसी, ये स्टोरी को पहुंचाने के लिए क्या करना चाहिए? ये दो चीज है.
Okay. तो पहली चीज तो ये है कि जब आप बोलते हैं कि हैंडक्राफ्ट ज्वेलरी इन्वेस्टमेंट के तरीके से नहीं बिकती है, मैं उससे सम्मत नहीं हूँ. मेरे ख्याल में आज हम जो भी ज्वेलरी बेचते हैं वो इन्वेस्टमेंट की तौर पे बेचते हैं. सोना खरीदिए, सोने का भाव बढ़ेगा, आप ज्वेलरी भी पहनो और जब जरूरत पड़े तब बेच भी दो, हम खुद वापस लेंगे. ये वो all those terms and conditions for me are only spelling out that you are selling an investment. Why do I have a return policy? Why do I have a buyback policy? Only because I am saying that you spend money with me right now, but whenever you are in need, I will give it back to you. This is not the way to do the business. And this is not done anywhere else except India. So we are selling an investment. That's my take. The second, whether to find a market for my product or whether to develop a product for my market, for the market that I want to get into. This is for me a no-brainer. I will determine which market is going to give me value for my effort. आज मैं मेरा डोकरा या मेरा बिदरी मैं इंडिया में नहीं बेचता हूँ. As of today, I am going to start slowly, but as of today also, after 8 years, I am not selling. Why? Because if I want to sell in India, I have to compromise. I have with my profitability. For some reason, and India culture is like that. Whether a Tiffany comes into India or whether Kellogg's comes into India or whether McDonald's comes into India, anybody who comes into India, they have to go down on their profitability because India is a very cost conscious market. And I'm saying that's great. That is one of the things that has helped our economy. So I'm not wanting to challenge that. But for that, I need to reach a certain level of expertise, which I have achieved with Dokra and Bidri. Because I was doing it in this thing, at that time I could afford lower productivity because my margins were better. Now that I have achieved that level of productivity as well as quality as a default, I can now think of selling things at a lower cost because my cost there also is lower. My rejection is lower, my production is higher. Okay, so it's a balance that you have to make depending on what you are looking at. It's a business goal, it's a business model you have to set up. Ideally, I would set up a model where I say, okay, Kolkata handcrafted jewelry today, and trust me, today is the right time to start creating international collection. Italy is in deep trouble. Italian gold jewelry is not going to be available, and if available, it is not going to be affordable. This is an ideal opportunity for Indian goldsmiths, Indian karigars, Indian artisans, whichever category they are in, to create international collections and go global. Trust me, you will hit the requirement on the head, and the iron is hot. Do that. Who's going to take the initiative? I don't know. Whether an individual company can take an initiative, sure, but then they cannot achieve what I am talking of, where I am saying, oh, replace Italy. And you can do it, trust me. I am of the firm belief that that can be achieved. So this is how I look at it. I would first look at the market, I would look at the opportunity and develop product that suits the needs. Unless I'm doing some radical innovation where I'm going to upset everything that is there on earth. Okay, then I will first develop the product and then go to market. So that's the difference. Yes. Yeah, Preetha, next question, please.
हेमंत भाई और एक क्वेश्चन पूछ लो.
हाँ, पूछिए. We can do it for 7 minutes more. एक क्वेश्चन, दो क्वेश्चन, जितना भी 7 मिनट में आता है वो.
Okay. So हम पहले अपना कोर कॉम्पिटेंसी डेवलप करें, फिर मार्केट में जाएं और मार्केट के रिक्वायरमेंट के हिसाब से कोर कॉम्पिटेंसी को मर्ज करके कुछ थोड़ा बहुत इनोवेशन डाल के स्ट्रेटेजिकली उसको मार्केट में जाके रिप्रेजेंट करें. दैट इज द राइट स्ट्रेटेजी.
No, who is asking this question? Can I know the name of the person, please?
Some unknown person. यहाँ पे
Okay, no issues. The thing is this, your core competency is actually defined, is that you want to use the skills of that craftsman. Whether it is a Kolkata karigar or whether it is a Junagadh karigar, I don't know, but your core competency is defined. Now what you need to do is, depending on which market you want to go, you will have a product in mind. You need to upskill those core competencies to give you either the design or the quality or both that are required for that target market. The requirements of quality for a Japanese market is way different than the requirements of quality for an American market. And a European market probably comes somewhere in between that. This is what we need to understand. I cannot go with the Japanese quality, which is going to cost me more, to America and say, buy this at this price. नहीं, हर एक मार्केट का अपना प्राइस बैंड भी होता है. तो ये पूरा स्टडी करना है, ये तुमको सब स्टडी करके एक स्ट्रैटेजी बनानी है, और वो स्ट्रैटेजी के हिसाब से फिर वो कारीगर को अपस्किल करके रीट्रेन करके आपको प्रोडक्ट निकालना है. और इसमें डिजाइनर का रोल तो हमेशा रहेगा. So this is the right way to go about it. Don't take half measures. Half measures लेंगे आप, you have to go all out. हाफ मेजर्स लेंगे ना तो वो खिचड़ी पकती नहीं है, वो कच्ची रहेगी और आप खा नहीं पाओगे. Okay, so don't take half measures, go with the full strategy in mind, develop the full strategy, and then address it. Yes, next question, please.
Preeta, move ahead.
Sorry?
Sir, there is a question from Nina. She is asking, since Fringiri has no awareness of brand in international market, how can we promote this craft?
Okay, so Nina Ganatra, I assume this is you. So as you saw, filigree, I showed you some pieces of Tarakashi. And actually, a person who put me onto Tarakashi designing, I have not yet started manufacturing Tarakashi, but we started designing. He is actually a very old designer friend called Shirin Amin. Okay. Filigree for me is about the same as Tarakashi. So again, it's the same. As you saw, we are first developing the design. Now, if you saw the designs that we are developing, we believe that those designs will sell in a global market. Now we are going to go to the Tarakashi craftsmen and see whether they can manufacture it. And if the manufacturing quality is right. So it's a process. There will be iterations. I will have to probably manufacture the same design 5 times before I get the right quality and the right thing. Okay. So this is going to be the way it will run. With any craft that you take, there is always an opportunity to go global. The only thing that you really need to do is to understand which market you are going into and what are your requirements to create the product. This is the whole idea. So Nina, how can Hemant Bhai help? Hemant Bhai can help you by what he is telling you right now. I don't know if you have any specific question, do connect with me. My email is me@shahhemant.com. Shah is my surname, Hemant is my name. me@shahhemant.com. Or you can contact GJEPC, they will be able to share my email with you. But I prefer email rather than phone or WhatsApp. Phone, definitely no. Thanks, Nina. Yes. Yeah. We've got 2 more minutes. Anything else for 2 minutes? Or Prakash ji, I think we can start winding up.
Yes,
It's better.
I think the time is over. And thank you very much, Hemant Bhai. You have ignited the quest into the minds of the participants to innovate. And that is the key to development. And thank you very much. And just I wish that some of the participants take it forward in gold jewelry, as one gentleman asked about filigree, Madam Ganatra in filigree. So it is, of course, very Indian craft, and we can do a lot in that. And we have got abundant supply of talented artisans in India.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Yes.
Yeah, Hemant Bhai, thank you so much. We have certain more questions. I will send across to you for the all questions for a reply. And
Okay.
Prakash sir, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prakash ji. Thank you,
Jita,
everybody.
actually, you deserve the thank to get connected with Hemant Bhai and make him agree to spare this time. And I had desired that there should be more number of participants, but I can definitely say that those who could not join, they missed a lot. Once they come to learn what has been deliberated over here, maybe we have to have a second session to include all these people and get them enriched.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sir,
Prakash
yes,
ji.
of course. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jita Rani. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Preetha. Appreciate your help, all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.